Hey, Charles here with Rocky Mountain, and today I'm going to be showing you how to check and adjust the valves on this 2023 YZ450F. Now this process is going to apply to any of the Yamahas that have the reverse cylinder head design. Now with that, it's going to work for 250s and 450s. So they could be the YZ models, could be the WR models, and even the FX models. The first bike that had that reverse cylinder head design came out in 2010 on their 450. And then it's going to apply all the way to the current bike. So that's a lot of years that this is going to cover, and that's why you want to refer to your model specific service manual for more information and specs that apply to your bike. So with that said, these valves are pretty dang reliable, but you do want to check them periodically, and that way you can prevent issues while you're out riding. If these go tight, the bike is going to be hard to start, especially when it first starts to happen. You could go on your ride, it might have started easy initially, and then once everything gets hot, you don't have the clearance that you did and it holds the valve open, bike's hard to start, and it's gonna give you some headaches. So if that's happened to you, you're in the right spot. Now I will say, if you need to make a big adjustment, it's probably time for a cylinder head rebuild, but if it's a minor adjustment, you'll probably be fine just getting those valves shimmed up and get the lash correct. So the reason for that is the titanium valves, they have a coating on them, and if that's worn through, then the valves are smoked. So with that being said, you're gonna save a lot of money by doing this job yourself. So right here, we've got a breakdown of what a dealership would normally charge and how much you'd be saving. So again, you're gonna save a lot of money doing it yourself. Let's get into the process. To get this done, we've got a pen and paper to take our notes. We've got safety glasses, we've got rags. Now up here, we've got some sockets. So we've got a 14 millimeter thin wall spark plug socket, 8, 10, and 17 millimeter sockets, 5, 6, and 14 millimeter Allens, 10 millimeter combo. I've got a 1/4 inch drive torque wrench. That's a must have. We've got digital calipers. You don't necessarily have to have these, but it's kind of hard to read the shims sometimes, so I recommend having those. Now, over here, we've got a couple screwdrivers. Now, with that, we also have this K&L auto cam chain tensioning tool. If you're serious about dirt bikes, I recommend having one of these. If you're not that serious about bikes yet, you can do this an alternate way. You can use a small flat blade screwdriver and some needle nose vice grips. That's gonna allow you to take your tension off your cam chain while you do the job. This way isn't as clean, but again, it's gonna get the job done if that's what you need. Now, other than that, we're using a breaker bar. We've got some pliers, some safety wire. I've got a magnet and I've got a little bag to cover it up just in case this has metal shavings on it. I don't want to get them in my engine. Now, another tool that is a must-have is feeler gauges. So these feeler gauges and a lot of these sockets, they just came out of our Tusk Moto toolbox. That's a great way to go if you need some tools. With that said, let's take a look at some of the parts we need. The main thing you need to get this done is some shims. So you can get these on the OEM diagrams. You can get them individually from Hot Cams or Pro X, or like us, you can get these in a kit. This is the most convenient way to get it done, and the kit's gonna come with 3 of each size of shim. Now with that said, usually we're gonna be reusing the valve cover gasket, but if it's been a few years since it's been done, or if it's leaking, we recommend replacing it. Now for the spark plug, these don't get changed out enough. Usually you're gonna wanna be replacing your spark plug. We're also gonna be using some assembly lube, a little bit of gloss coat. I've got some soapy water to help clean things off, and I'm also gonna use a dab of grease. Now throughout the process, I'll be using these rubber gloves to protect my hands. Now, if you need any of the parts, the chemicals, or tools that we've shown you, you can find that stuff on our website by clicking the link in the description below. All right, first things first. We've got a clean bike. We don't want dirt getting down into our engine. And then the engine is also at room temperature. You don't want to run your bike before you do this check because your measurements aren't going to be accurate. So engine's cold and we're ready to go. So with that said, we're going to remove our seat, our side panels, and our shrouds. Next, we'll disconnect the battery, make sure it doesn't turn over on us. Now we can remove our gas tank. We have 2 bolts in front, the fuel pump connector on bottom, and our high pressure line. So to disconnect the fuel line, we've got that clip in the front. Pop up the red clip and then there's 2 tabs you can squeeze in on the sides and remove it. And then disconnect the crankcase breather. Now that you have access to the valve cover, it's a good idea to clean everything up around here. We don't want any dirt falling in. Now right here, you'll notice we have our intake boot and our throttle body removed. That's because we're doing a separate video for a top end rebuild. You don't need to do that for this job, but if you are doing a top end, go check out that video. Now to remove the spark plug cap, we've got this retainer. Some bikes are gonna be a little different. You might not have that retainer. And then some bikes, they're gonna have 2 bolts. Other bikes are gonna have 3 like ours. And then before you remove the cover, I'm gonna use some compressed air to clean out by the spark plug, and I'm using a 14mm thin wall socket to remove it. Pull the valve cover. The next step is to put this engine on top dead center on the compression stroke. So what you're gonna have to do is rotate the engine over, and one thing you can do is watch the intake cam open and then close. And we're rotating counterclockwise. And once that intake valve starts to close, you're gonna take a look at your timing marks on both the cam sprockets, and you've got a timing mark on your flywheel. You'll look in that inspection hole. Make sure all 3 marks are lined up just like this image. The outer dots on the cam sprockets will line up with the cam cap sealing surface, and the mark on the flywheel will line up with the notch in the cover. So these are looking good. Now we can take some measurements. We'll start with the intake, which is this one. The measurement here is gonna be 0.10 to 0.17 millimeters. So we're using our feeler gauge, and we'll start with that smaller size. And all we're doing is putting the feeler gauge in between the cam lobe and that shim bucket. And when you're doing this measurement, it's either a pass or a fail. The feeler gauge will either fit in or it simply won't. So we started with that smaller size. It fit in easy. We'll go with the other extreme. That one doesn't fit. So we know we're within spec, but I do want to know exactly where we're at. So we'll try one more. So this right intake valve, that's at 0.13 millimeters, which is right in between our spec, so we know it's good. Now I'm gonna do those same checks for the remaining valves and write down all of the measurements. And then the specs for our exhaust valves are 0.15 to 0.22 millimeters, but keep in mind that the specs for your bike might be a little different, so again, always refer to your model specific service manual. Now, one thing to keep in mind is underneath the cam, you have that flat shim bucket. So you kind of want to try to match the angle of the shim bucket. So keeping that feeler gauge as flat as possible when you go in and out, that's going to give you an accurate reading. Now for our bike, all 4 of these valves were in spec. So from here, we could go ahead and reinstall the valve cover and put everything back together. But I will say, we did have this left side intake valve. This one's right on the edge of spec. So just to show you guys how to do this if you did need to adjust your valves, we're gonna put this left intake valve right in the middle of the spec instead of leaving it on the edge. Now to adjust the valves, one of the first things you wanna do is loosen the cam chain tension. The tensioner is located on the left side of the bike at the back of the cylinder. So on the back of the tensioner, there's a bolt. We're gonna remove it along with the washer. And then there is a special tool that is much easier to use to remove the tension. If you don't have that, what we're gonna do is show you a way to do this with a small flat blade screwdriver. We're gonna turn this all the way clockwise, and you're gonna feel that bottom out. And then that should have removed all of the tension from your cam chain. And we're going to use some needle nose vice grips to clamp onto the screwdriver and make sure it doesn't move, and make sure the tension stays off of that chain. Again, this is the budget way to help anyone get the job done, but the right tool that we showed earlier is the easiest and best way to do this. All right, now I'm just going to make sure the cam chain's loose, and then we can loosen up the cam caps. Now, I do want to point out that these cam caps are going to look different than some of them on other bikes. So you might have two caps that go sideways or two that go the length of the bike like ours. In either case, remove the bolts in a crisscross pattern. Pull those caps off. Pay attention when you do this. Some bikes will have C-clips that need to be removed, and also locate your dowel pins. We're also using a piece of safety wire around the cam chain to make retrieval easier. And then you can pull the cams off one at a time. Now, just above the cam chain, I'm gonna put a rag in this cavity right here, just to make sure I don't drop anything in there. And then I'm gonna use a magnet to remove the buckets and shims. And as you remove these, make sure you keep them in order. And typically, if you only have one out of adjustment, you're only gonna have to remove one. So with that, the shim came with the bucket. Sometimes the shim is gonna stay down on top of the valve. So if that's the case, make sure you get that out of there. Now to make your adjustment, you're gonna take a look at the shim. There should be a number laser etched into the top. Now, sometimes you can't really read this number, but if you can, even better. If you can't, you can use your digital calipers and measure it. Now, digital calipers aren't always the most accurate, but it's gonna get you close enough. Now, on our shim, you see it says 208. So if the number is an 8 or a 9, you're gonna round up to 10. If it's a 4, 5, or 6, round it to 5. And then if it's a 0, 1, or 2, round to 0. So for our shim, we'd round this up to a 210. Now, all we need to do is take this to the chart that's in the service manual, and we're gonna go to the 210 shim size on top with the valve clearance shim chart. And then we're gonna match that up with our clearance. Now, even though we measured 0.10, let's just say we measured 0.09. So we would just follow that line all the way over to 210. And then that's telling me I need a 205 shim to correct the clearance. It's really as simple as that. All we have to do is put it back in. Now, if you had an exhaust shim, it's gonna be the same deal. All you have to do is match the shim size to your measured clearance, and it's gonna tell you your new shim size to correct the clearance. Now, if for some reason you don't like using these charts, you can always subtract whatever clearance you need from the shim you have. Now again, if you have too little of clearance, that means you need a smaller shim. If you have too much clearance, which is pretty rare, you would need a larger shim. Now the last thing that I want to address is if you measured 0 clearance, the coating on your valve is probably worn through, and it's probably time to rebuild your cylinder head. But with that, if for some reason you want to shim the valves, what you're gonna do is go to that 0 measurement, take your shim size, try the new shim, and that's gonna give you a baseline, or at least hopefully give you a baseline and something that you can actually measure, and you're probably gonna have to adjust it one more time. Now for our new shim on the 450s, we're using the 9.48 millimeter Hot Cams shim kit. So with this, it comes with 3 of every size, and they're all numbered, so we just simply pull the new shim out. It's as easy as that, but if you want to buy individual shims, we have those on our website as well. So it's really whatever is easiest for you. Now, before I put this back into the bike, we want to make a few inspections here. So with this, you're going to want to take a look at the bucket, make sure it's not scratched up, scored, or damaged. That one looks fine. We're also looking at the cams, making sure the lobes aren't worn down. And you want to look at the journals and make sure they're not all scored up. And then with these cam caps, so this is the most likely area that you're going to see wear. So if these are all scored or grooved out, then you know they're bad. And if these are bad, you're gonna have to replace your head with them. And also look on the opposite side on the cylinder head and make sure that looks good as well. We'll do the same checks for the exhaust cam. The only difference here is you've got a spring, you wanna make sure that's in good condition. You can look at the auto decompressor plunger. You can move the weight, make sure that moves. So we know everything is working good here. Once you've made those checks, it's a good idea to apply some assembly lube to everything as you go back together. I'm using the spray-on type, but we have several different types on our website. And then just so you guys know, you should have oil on these bolts as they go in. So we're ready to take this shim over to the bike and set it in place. Now when you set the shim in place, you want to have that number facing up. Then we'll set the bucket on top. And then before I put the cams in, I do want to wipe the valve cover sealing surface since it's easy to reach right now. Now I'm going to install the intake cam first. You've got two dots, and this first dot, that's going to be facing upwards, and then this one, that's the one that's going to be flush with either your cylinder head or the cam tower joints. And I'm going to remove my rag, expose my cam chain, pull that up. And then with the cam chain, you want to make sure that the most forward side, you want to have that pulled tight when you do your timing. So for the exhaust cam, we've got that dot. Again, that's going to line up with the cylinder head or the cam tower joint. And you can go ahead and remove that safety wire from your cam chain and set this into place. All right, now both cams are in. I've verified my timing mark on the flywheel. That's looking good. So starting on this side of the chain, I'm gonna make sure that's tight on the cam. We'll pull both of these tight and then check the timing marks. Now you'll notice that the intake cam, that thing is right on the money with the dot. The exhaust cam, it's slightly down, but if we go down one tooth or up one tooth, it's even further off. So that timing mark is where it needs to be on this bike. From here, we can go ahead and reinstall the cam caps. We've got our dowel pins in place. And this E, that's gonna be the exhaust cam. Then you wanna make sure the cap is fully settled down before you ever start to tighten any bolts. Now this cap that goes next to our sprockets, this is only going to go on one way. Again, we've got our dowel pins in place. If you have the little C clips or half moon metal clips, make sure those are in the correct position and everything's lined up. And with these cams, you can see we have these guides for our cap that we need to line up. From here, we're going to tighten all these bolts in a crisscross pattern. We'll do it in a couple steps, and the final torque is going to be 7.4 foot-pounds on our bike. Now again, refer to your manual. Some of these are going to be 7.2 foot-pounds. Not that that's a huge difference, but just be aware of it. Okay, now that we're tightened down, we still have a loose cam chain. So what we want to do is pull the screwdriver or the special tool from that cam chain tensioner. Then we're going to verify that the cam chain is tight now. We're also going to double check our timing. And then from there we can reinstall that gasket for the spark plug hole, reinstall the valve cover. Now our cover doesn't have the half moons on it, but if yours does, make sure you put just a little bit of silicone sealant in each corner to prevent leaks. Now our valve covered bolts are going to be torqued to 7.4 foot-pounds. Install your spark plug. The spark plug boot, and with these boots, a little silicone spray or gloss coat will make these slide right in. And then for ours, we have this retainer. We're going to tighten that nut and reconnect our hose. Reconnect your fuel line. Next, we'll install the mounting hardware and strap for the tank along with that vent tube, and we'll make our electrical connection underneath. After that, I'm going to reconnect my battery, reinstall the plastics and the seat. So there you have it. We've got the valves adjusted and hey, we're ready to go ride. Now, if you have any questions about the process, leave those down in the comments. If you need any parts for your bike, you can find that stuff on our website. Click the link in the description below. We offer free shipping on orders over $75. So take advantage of that and subscribe to our channel for more helpful content. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.